Thank you, Mr. Dellums. Mr. Speaker, every once in a while it would be a good thing for the Congress of the United States and the White House to deal with the reality of life facing the American people, especially the working people, the poor, the children, and the elderly, and escape the cynicism of the Washington Beltway mentality. Mr. Speaker, 5.5 million of our children are hungry. 2 million of our fellow citizens are sleeping out on the streets. The standard of living of the average American worker is in decline. Cities and towns throughout this country are facing enormous problems in terms of drugs, crime, a collapsing infrastructure, a failing educational system, and in our rural areas, thousands of family farmers are being driven off of the land. Millions of bright young people cannot afford to go to college because they come from low-income or middle-class families, and over 80 million Americans have either no health insurance at all or inadequate health insurance. Mr. Speaker, the Cold War with the Soviet Union is over. The war we must win now is to provide food for our hungry children, affordable housing for our citizens, a national health care system which covers every American, and a new industrial policy which will provide good-paying, environmentally sound jobs for our workers. And we must also deal with a $3 trillion national debt. Mr. Speaker, we do not need to spend $290.8 billion for defense, as the President would have us spend. We do not need to spend $290.7 billion, as the democratically controlled House Armed Forces Committee would have us spend. And for those of you who are into ratios, the difference between the Republican plan and the democratically controlled Armed Forces Committee plan is 0.04%. Mr. Speaker, we do not need to spend $3.5 billion more on Star Wars. We have already spent $25 billion on that program. Interestingly enough, that is exactly the same number, $25 billion, that the President wants to cut from Medicare over the next 5 years. $25 billion for Star Wars and a $25 billion cut for Medicare over the next 5 years. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Mr. Speaker, we do not need more money for B-2 bombers at $800 million a plane. In my state of Vermont, children are not getting enough to eat because of cutbacks in the WIC program, and there are people here in the Congress who are proposing $800 million for an airplane. We have already spent $31 billion to buy 15 B-2 bombers. Enough is enough. Mr. Speaker, let us be clear about job creation. We can create far more employment through domestic manufacturing, the construction of millions of affordable housing units, the rebuilding of our cities, and the preservation of our family farms than we can through military spending. Mr. Speaker, it is my view that the United States can maintain its position as the strongest military presence on earth and still cut our military spending by 50% over the next 5 years. Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Arizona.